Chapter 6, Section 8, Day 1 is all about graphing radical functions, so we'll talk about square root functions today first. If you take a look, we'll talk about transformations, just like we did a couple of chapters. In letter A, y equals the square root of x. That's considered to be the parent function. It kind of looks like a shooting star, and it'll start shooting, so to speak, at the origin. So if you have a plus 4 tacked on the end, that's considered to be outside. Plus 4 is moving up 4. That minus 5 will move that shooting star down 5. In letter D, the plus 3 inside is opposite inside. We'll really move it left 3. Letter E, minus 2 inside is opposite inside. We'll move it right 2. And in letter F, that negative outside will cause it to reflect across the x-axis, which is really a falling star. So if you take a look at number one is the parent function. So all of these will start wherever that transformation begins, but because there's no left, right, up, or down movement, it'll have a starting point of 0, 0. So it's not going to have anything to the left. If you think about all of the x values to the left of the origin, they're negative, and we can't have negatives under the radical. So these graphs will start at a point and move on to one direction or the other, most often the right. So I'm just going to pick one or two values to show you how this is going to work. And because that's a square root, I'm going to pick prettier values like 4. If I put a 4 in for x, the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 comes back out. 4, 2 is right there. I'm also going to pick 9 because that's a perfect square. If I put a 9 in, a 3 comes out. So 9, 3 is right there. You're going to notice that the x value has to get a lot larger for the y value to increase. So that's why I consider these to kind of look like shooting stars. So they'll start there and work their way out. They'll increase a little bit, but because they have to have a lot of movement to the right in order to increase a little bit, they kind of look a little flatter. So number 2, this one has moved down 1. So I know that this graph is going to end up starting down 1. That ordered pair right there, in case you want it, is 0, negative 1. So I'm still going to do what I did before. Because x is under the radical, I'm going to pick pretty values of x, like 4. If I put a 4 in, the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 minus 1 is 1. 4, 1 is right there. And then I'm going to put a 9 in. Square root of 9 is 3, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So I end up with a graph like that. Still a shooting star, and it starts at 0, negative 1. Number 3, that plus 4 says this graph moves up 4, so it'll start there. That ordered pair is 0, 4. Pick pretty values again. I'm going to pick 4 and 9. If I put a 4 in, the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 plus 4 is 6. Right there. If I put a 9 in, the square root of 9 is 3, and 3 plus 4 is 7. So they're all going to have the same shape, but that left, right, up, down movement will really just kind of change its starting point. All right, so speaking of left-right movement, that minus 1 inside actually moves it to the right one. So now my starting point is at 1, 0. Now the smart values that we picked in the first couple aren't just as smart here, because if I put a 4 in, 4 minus 1 is 3, and I don't know the square root of 3. So instead, because I moved everything to the right one, instead of picking 4, I'm going to pick 5. And instead of picking 9, I'm going to pick 10. Those numbers are 1 unit to the right from what I normally would pick. If I put a 5 in, inside the radical, I get a 5 minus 1, which is 4, and the square root of that is 2. If I put a 10 in, 10 minus 1 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So just because you slide left or right doesn't mean you're going to change the shape. It's just going to change the starting point. Number 5, that plus 4 inside actually moves it left 4. So I know that my starting point is going to be at negative 4, 0. So consider the fact that I would have liked to pick 4, but if I moved 4 units over to the left, 4 units to the left of that would be a 0. If I normally pick 4 and I move 4 units to the left, now I'm out 0. And if I normally pick 9, 4 units to the left would be a 5. So I can put a 0 in. 0 plus 4 is 4, and the square root of that is 2. If I put a 5 in, 5 plus 4 is 9, and the square root of that is 3. So 0, 2 is right there, and 5, 3 is right there. So number 6 had 2 moves. I'm going to list them first. I see a reflection, and I see a left 2. So left 2 means that my starting point is going to end up being at negative 2, 0. So the first smart value I'm going to pick is positive 2, and the second one that I'm going to pick is going to be positive 7, because again, I'm moving left 2 from my normal values. If I put a 2 in there, 2 plus 2 is 4. The square root of that is 2, but the negative out front gives me a negative output. 2, negative 2 is actually in the fourth quadrant. If I put a 7 in, 7 plus 2 is 9. The square root of that is 3, but it's negative because of the negative out front. And so what happens is anytime that you have a graph like this that's negative, you're going to end up with what I consider to be a falling star. A falling star just means that it doesn't rise, it actually goes down instead. Number 7, there are 2 moves here. I have a reflection and a right 4. That means that my first starting point will actually be at 4, 0. So I'm going to pick 8 because I would like to pick 4, but 4 units to the right would be 8. If I put an 8 in, 8 minus 4 is 4, and the square root of that is 2. A negative 2 will come back out. And I'm not actually going to pick any other points because I would normally at this point pick a 13, but 13 goes off the graph, so I'll just let it like that. I do want on this one to draw the incorrect graph, so I'm going to do the incorrect graph in red. I have a lot of students who will draw that. Just be careful, you don't want it to arch down, you still want to kind of let it curve up just a little bit. So just look at the difference of those and make sure you're okay with the fact that the red one is not the correct answer. It should be the green one. Number 8, 2 moves here. We've had a reflection and we've had a down 6. So my starting point is actually at 0, negative 6. My smart values don't change. I'll pick 4 and 9. So the square root of 4 is 2. The negative out front makes it negative 2, and negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. If I put a 9 in, the square root of 9 is 3. But the negative makes it negative 3, and negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9.